As I was preparing for this, I noticed that yes? Tom is limping. He's got a problem with his hip, and he's got a problem with his knee. It's all in his head. His problem with his head, too. Anyway, last week we discovered that Zephaniah had butchered one of the great hymns of thanksgiving that we have. We gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. And he absolutely ruined it by saying we gather together as stubble left over in a field, and there's nothing left in the world, and all we can do is turn to God, and it's kind of ruined the song for me. I don't know. This week, I think he did the same thing in this great song, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. He talks about tidings of judgment and joy instead of tidings of, how's the song go? Comfort and joy. And I think his song goes something like this. God rest ye merry Israelites, let everything dismay, for God will come upon that day and blow you all away. I'm sure that's how he wrote it. The only ones who are left alive are those who are humble and meek. Oh, tidings of judgment and joy. Isn't that how it goes? That's how it goes. I think in this particular verses, this is exactly how it goes. These are tidings both of judgment and joy. The first half is horrible and talks about the end of everything that is in this universe. And the second half, though, comes and provides us with joy and comfort and everything. By the way, next week I will talk about Christmas. And we will sing Christmas songs. But we got delayed one week a while back, and it just threw me all off, and I can't skip this. God put it in the Bible for some reason, and we need to hear it. The focus in these chapters has shifted from talking about the nations, and now in chapter 2, to talking about Jerusalem in particular in chapter 3. It switches from talking about those evil people out there to talking about the evil people in here, as Zephaniah moves in his outline. We see here that it begins with a section on judgment, tidings of judgment, and then it switches to these tidings of joy, as even God gets into the act and sings. I don't know of any other place, I didn't really research it, of any other place where it says that God sings. You know, we're always singing, and we get to heaven and we sing, and the angels sing, and we are always praising God, but where does it ever say that God sings? And here it does. As God sings joy into this world, sings about the great things that he is going to be doing, and he's bringing us joy. The judgment of Jerusalem falls into two parts. First it says, these are the bad things that are going to happen to you, and then in the second part he says, I've warned you that bad things are coming, that judgment is coming. In the second half of these verses that we're looking at today, the joy can also be divided into two parts. We have God's promises for the remnant that survives, for the believers that last through the time of judgment. And then we also have, in these last verses, that day of joy that we will have when we celebrate with God, our great King. We start off with this city of arrogance and corruption. And it is full of all of this. There is nothing, well, there's very little left good in the city of Jerusalem. After the woe against Jerusalem's neighbors, Zephaniah now pronounces this woe against Jerusalem herself. The change from Assyria to Jerusalem, though, is very subtle. It's not announced. He doesn't say, and now you're going to get yours. He just starts off by saying, woe to the city of oppressors. And all of the believers went, amen. They said, yeah, go get them, God. You know, take it to them. They deserve it. They need to be punished. They're evil folks. Let them have it. But then Zephaniah starts getting tricky. Slowly, Jerusalem is revealed through all of this. The reader is drawn into this woe, thinking, oh yeah, let's go get them. And then suddenly, Zephaniah starts slipping in this stuff and saying, oh no, this is God punishing us. Jerusalem is gradually recognized. First off, he starts off by saying, God is going to judge those people who don't trust in the Lord. Well, that could be the Assyrians, couldn't it? Oh, yeah, that could be the Assyrians. But it just doesn't sound quite right. Then in verse 2 it says, God is going to punish those people who claim that her God is the Lord. Well, that doesn't sound like the Assyrians, but what does that mean? And he goes on and he says, and the Lord within her. Well, that can't be the Assyrians because the Lord was never with those people. They're evil and don't deserve anything. God never... So who is he talking about? He must be talking about us. And so they've been suckered into this. They've been thinking all these bad thoughts about the Assyrians, and now all of a sudden they have to think bad thoughts about themselves. Everything mentioned in these verses about Nineveh also could be very easily applied to the people of Jerusalem and vice versa. Because there's not much difference by this time between the people that were inside God's fold and the people outside, between them and us. The prophet lists 12 sins in his list. He calls them oppressors, and he calls them rebellious, and he calls them defiled, and he says that she obeys no one, and he says that she accepts no correction, and he goes on to say that she doesn't trust in the Lord, and he goes on to say she doesn't draw near to her God, and he goes on to say her officials are like roaring lions devouring innocent people, and her rulers are like evening wolves who leave nothing for the morning. And he goes on to say further, her prophets are arrogant, they're treacherous men. He says her priests profane the sanctuary, and finally he rounds out by saying her priests do violence to the law. He just hammers them, and he keeps hammering them. And it's not them, it's now us. And it is us. Because he's talking about people who should be trusting in the Lord. But we fall short, and we know it. And we should look at this and say, how does this apply to me? How is God going to judge me? The first 7 sins are sins against God. And it's interesting, because the first sin is a sin of oppression, and that doesn't sound like a sin against God. But whenever we persecute the poor, we are persecuting God himself, and he takes it very personally. He takes it very personally. If we don't participate in providing Thanksgiving baskets, if we don't participate in shoe boxes, if we don't participate in gift exchange or gift giving to poor people, God takes it very personally. And now I'm going to start meddling. You know, I don't know about health care. I don't know what the solution is to the problem. But I do know that when we do not provide health care for the poor,